It's okay. Hello and welcome to day 4 of FutureFest. To those of you who have attended any of our previous talks this week, welcome back. And if this is your first event, thank you for joining us. If you're not familiar with it yet, FutureFest comprises an incredibly inspiring series of 15 talks, ranging from featuring a range of amazing architects from around the world, each from an A+Award-winning firm with their own unique story to tell. This celebration of architectural innovation is also our way of warming up for the 11th annual A+Awards, which are launching this October. Stay tuned for more details on that a little later on. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Hannah Feniak, and I'm the architecture editor at Architizer. Throughout the next 3 weeks, I'm going to be sharing hosting duties with my colleague Paul Keskes. Today, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to chat with CEO and partner of the A+Award-winning firm Studio Toggle. Today, we'll be discussing dwelling design in desert cities. As we wait for the room to fill up, I want to encourage you all to say hi in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. Let us know where you're from. I always love to see the global audience pouring in, and I look forward to seeing the people who also tune into the live recordings later. For some people, they're still asleep right now. As we're doing that, I'm going to share a few pointers about our live platform. So if you're having any technical difficulties with the stream, you can click on the help icon in the bottom left corner of your screen, and you'll see a few options for improving your picture, the sound, and so on. It's worth noting that there will also be a recorded version of this talk, which will be sent to your email afterwards, so you can catch up on anything that you missed. You can also feel free to forward that email to colleagues and friends after the event so that they can register and watch the talk as well. Okay, thirdly, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Hend at any time, just click on the questions tab in the bottom right-hand side of your screen and then type your question. You can also scroll through the questions to see if there's anything that someone else has asked that you might be interested in hearing. If this is the case, you can upvote it. You'll see there's a little number on the left-hand side of the question, and we'll aim to ask the most popular questions a little later on. Finally, you can feel free to use the React button in the central part of the bottom bar on your screen whenever you see something that you like. If you'd like to learn more about FutureFest and to see our full schedule of talks, you can go to architizer.com and click on the very top article. Here we list the names, times, and dates of each talk, along with a short description of what type of content you can expect each speaker to cover. From this article, you'll be able to make notes of your favorites or to register to past events in order to access the recordings of the talks you've missed. And now, allow me to introduce Hend Almatrouk. One moment. Hend is from Kuwait and did her Bachelor of Architecture in the American University of Sharia in the UAE, graduating in 2008. She went on to do her master's degree in urban strategies at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. Excuse me for not pronouncing it in German. And she graduated with distinction in 2011. That same year, she established Studio Toggle with Gijo Paul George, a fellow graduate. By 2016, she established Studio Toggle's Porto branch in Portugal. As CEO and partner, Hend is in charge of client relations and marketing, while being heavily involved in design, site supervision, and planning. Hend has also overseen the growth of Studio Toggle from a 2-person team working out of a cafe to a medium-sized firm of 12 employees operating out of 2 global offices in Kuwait City and Porto. Studio Toggle has won numerous A+ awards for their projects, and this year they scooped 2 A+ Firm Awards. They were the jury winner of the Best Firm in the Middle East and Africa and the Popular Choice winner of Best Young Firm. Hend's work was exhibited in multiple prestigious venues like the Venice Biennale in 2010, Essence 2011 at MAC in Vienna, the Experimental Architecture Biennale Volume 1 in Prague. In recognition of her achievements, she was named the Young Architect of the Year in 2017 by the Middle Eastern Architecture magazine for the, quote, undeniable strides she made in a short period of time with projects that continue to positively contribute to the growing urban fabric of GCC, end quote. So, Hend, I'd like to hand the mic over to you. What do you have in store for us today?
Thank you, Hannah, for the introduction. So today we're going to be talking about dwelling design in desert cities, and how we can organize chaos. Thanks for everyone. I can see some hearts and some, thank you so much. We shall start. Is it on, Hannah, on the screen? Yes, yes. Okay, so this is, the first image that you see here is Kuwait City, both in the past and the present. So on the left side, you can see, actually this was taken in the 1940s, so you can see the low housing made of mud, and you can see that the development is sort of organic, and it's not too organized, but you don't feel the chaotic feel in the city. And on the right side is Kuwait at the present time. And as you can see as well, you have different kind of development, multi-housing, you have like the low-rise, the high-rise, commercial projects. And like every other city, like all the cities around the world right now look like the image on the right side. So we all live in cities. And today, world's global population is around 7.7 billion. And in the next 30 years, it's expected to increase by 2 billion people. So cities represent under 3% of the world's land and are home of 55% of global population. So the urban space defines how people live today. And this creates relevant challenges, of course. So how can cities grow sustainably? In this presentation, particularly, we'll be focusing on housing challenges in the Middle Eastern cities, and specific of those, Kuwait, where we operate mainly, and most of the projects are in Kuwait. So how can dwelling design contribute to individual well-being while simultaneously improving the urban environment and see its transformation? We all know that housing is becoming a challenge with this rapid growth and the tremendous pressure in urban expansion, and more than 800 million people living in slums as per United Nations data. And the answer for this problem is not simple. Like, for example, you see that image on the right. This is actually one of the housing projects in Mexico. And one can argue that, it's obvious from the image that you see this intensive expansion of housing as pearl and cookie clutter, and there's like similar housing modules. It's not chaotic, it seems organized, but there's loss of urban identity and erosion of qualified public space. So what role can architecture play in these transformations? And how can dense metropolises be synonym to high urban quality and better quality of life? We're talking about Middle East, since I'm going to be talking about the challenges that we have here in Kuwait as well. So in the end of the 20th century, the Middle Eastern region had been experienced a rapid growth. And we're talking here, for example, let's say UAE as an example. So from the 60s up to today, the population grew up to 3.3 million inhabitants. And the combination of this rapid growth and harsh desert climates in the region, along with the political and cultural challenges, define a transformation field where spatial design, both urban and architectural, plays a key role. Kuwait is a specific case. Of course, like every other city or Middle Eastern city, it's undergone a transformative urban boom, and the population grew up to 1,500% since the 60s, while urban Kuwait constitutes only 2.5 to 3%, let's say, of the country's land. When you look at the image on the right side, this is the first master plan of the city in the 1950s. And one can identify that there's an important aspect here, and you can see the strict use zoning. The industrial commercial zones, which is understandable. You can see the yellow, orange, and red zones. This is understandable. But then you go to the residential part, where you can see a separate, like there's a clear segregation between two zones of residentials. You have the Kuwaitis, or the locals, let's say, and you have the expats. And what is the meaning of expats? So anyone who is not a Kuwaiti national. And this distinction between the national and the expat create this local social cultural challenge. And because of this urban context and this segregation zones, it resulted in different housing typologies in Kuwait. And it is very clear even when you come to the city. So the first one, you can see it in the images on the right side. So the first one, we have the large single family living houses. Again, I'm not saying it is super organized. Those areas are kind of more fancy. They have wider streets, but the houses themselves they act like islands. There's no sense of community. There's no connection with the street. And most of them are inward looking, which is understandable, but there is no relationship with the streetscape. The second typology, which is the image in the middle, it is the mid-rise landmark housing. Mainly, this is occupied by, let's say, young Kuwaiti families. This is in the recent times, and mainly the expatriates who have like a good income, not a low income, good income, they can afford it. The third one, on the other hand, is the problem to me, and it's a challenge. So it is, as you can see, it is. It comes in like in a very dense area. You can see those blocks of housing on top of each other, next to each other. There's no streets in between. There's like very small alleys. There's no connection with the streetscape. And actually it's making this challenge because there's no quality of life, and you can feel it. No one wants to live there, but mainly it is, unfortunately, it's allocated for expat with low income and expat workers. So this brings a challenge, how to organize, how this city is going forward and how to organize these things, and because you want to give quality of life for everyone. So what is the architect's role here? Today as a discipline, architecture itself is facing a radical transformation from its classical role in organization of space as a holistic sense. And today it fights for its own continued significance. And sometimes actually we feel that we are pushed to a lesser role or by determined program. And at the end, you're not even participating in the urban solution, which we are architects, we're planners. So how can architecture positively influence the urban environment and still a transformation? Can one house, and we always call it the seed, can one house or the seed the change in the entire neighborhood? So how do we do it? Us in our practice, we try to bring awareness. This is the first thing I think we should bring to the table. If there's a lot of problems, and we as architects always introduce those solutions, and we have to introduce these solutions for the continuity of our cities in a sustainable manner. So the very first thing is to bring awareness by inspire broader thinking. And as an example, our unit plus is a pavilion done by a waste from work wood. It's to bring awareness about the construction waste management. So this is one, it could be a simple step, it could be a simple strategy, but we have to contribute and participate in that. Another way of doing this is, okay, so before I start that, just know that Kuwait lacks public spaces. We do not have public spaces. And when we do have them, there's nothing there. Nothing for the user to feel something or to interact with something. So create opportunities for reflection. And this is one of the examples. The Luminous Drapes is a project that was done in Kuwait in one of the plazas in the Opera House. We had the opportunity to do something. And the installation proposed we propose something so that the user can interact with the surrounding. You give them a different opportunity. They think about it in a different way. And they're like, oh, maybe we can do that in this plaza somewhere else. Maybe, and then the ideas come along. So it's just, you have to encourage that way of thinking. Something else we bring to the table here is that we need to create moments. It's not only making buildings or beautiful buildings. Sometimes the contribution comes in a smaller scale or bigger scale. So we have to create moments. You need to make an experience for someone, and you have to reach their level of intimacy. Here, like, you rose their emotions. For example, in this project, that's a house in Mishrif, and this is actually the basement. We created that. It's an old looking house, and this is the basement. We could have just, kept it empty, as in someone's coming from the ground floor, coming down, and then you just pass it as a transitional area, and then you go to the inside. But we have placed, we want someone to feel something. It is important. I think architecture has that power for us to feel good about our environment or about the places that we inhabit. It's part of our lives. It's a part of our daily lives. So we place that fountain there because we wanted to trigger even your senses. Could be something by what you see, something beautiful. You feel calm. You hear the sound of water in the backdrop, and at the same time, it adds value. It acts like an evaporative cooling, and it cools down the hot summer days, which here it's crazy. One more thing is, be the decision maker. Now, when we're talking about Kuwait as a context, actually there's an economical pressure. The lands are very expensive. Everybody wants to maximize the built up area. That is not healthy as well. I mean, I understand that everybody has needs and we respect their needs, but that is not healthy. So what we do is that we sit with the client, we try to encourage them to build less. I mean, not less as in you compromise with your needs. Of course, we're going to fulfill your needs, but you need to have this open spaces. We need to create these numerous voids and unbuilt to have an interaction with your surrounding and to have an experience with the exterior, still maintaining the privacy, which is of course needed in this region. But it's just to have that dialogue. So you need to encourage them to have that courage to make that decision. At the same time, actually, even aesthetically, we look at it from another perspective as well, is that we keep the aesthetics very, like with the forms are simple. We use simple palettes as well because we don't want something to, have like a high maintenance. So we have that discussion with the clients and we encourage them to make the right decisions. Seed the change. So by reinterpreting traditional architecture elements and questioning the establishment parameters, we believe our project those single structures as houses can seed the change. By impacting the individual user at their intimate, as we spoke about in the previous slides, can create transformative mindset. And with that, we can change our community. And then it's like a ripple effect. You go to the like by an individual level, then they change their mindset. It's like, oh, this works, this is better, we feel better, and then goes to the neighborhood. So we believe in this powerful sense of space, belonging, and well-being that can become collective desire and hopefully lead to a better sustainable environment. We always say in Studio Toggle that simplicity is complex, but please just keep in mind that we are talking about the Middle Eastern context, okay? So it is so hot here. The temperatures varies from 45 to 55. And when it's 45, we're so happy. We think it's so cool, but it's not. So sustainable design and low carbon footprint, it's just, sometimes it's impossible with the technology. It just feels impossible with the technology available. And sometimes it's just expensive. And when this happens, it prevents the adoption of these techniques. So in our case, most of the time working with tight budgets, not all the time, but most of the time, working with tight budgets, we adapt passive strategies from the vernacular. And we constantly learn from the past. And I think this is very important. Of course, we're not going to come and copy paste it because life changed, but we constantly learn from the past. And we adapt the age-old techniques and reinterpret them in our own context, which is the modern context of architecture. And that's why I say always simplicity is complex, because it is complicated. So those passive strategies, it is our approach. It is our approach in all the projects that we've done so far. We apply it in all our projects. And today, we're just going to take some of the key projects. I mean, we cannot talk about all of them, of course, but I think this is it's a good example of talking about how we implemented these strategies. So we're going to talk about Jade. We're going to talk about Edges, that both residential towers, and Ternion, which falls under the first category as a singular housing villas. We believe in the balance between the opposites, and that forms follows function, and that simplicity is complex always, and chaos can be beautiful and organized. We're operating from Kuwait, Porto, and Bangalore, and we understand that urban context actually in different perspectives. The first project we're going to be talking about is Jade. This project is completed in 2021. It is in Salmiya. Again, Salmiya is one of Kuwait areas which mainly they live expatriates there, and we're going to talk about the first typology and the second typology. Jade is a high-end building, but it is actually in a site where, as you can see, actually the surrounding, it is a high, dense area, fully populated with buildings and people. And we have two things here, actually, okay? So you have the investor. Again, there's a client, there's an investor who wants, he has a site, it is limited, it's a small site, and they want to maximize the built-up area. We understand that, 100%. At the same time, we have our goals, we have our values. We know there's a problem, and we want to introduce the solutions in our design. And how do we do it successfully that we don't compromise the objective of the client, and at the same time, we don't want to compromise on our objectives as architects, because we want to make a change. And we can just, every time make something little by little in each project, and maybe it changes. So the concept of Jade is, when you analyze or you understand the surrounding, it's completely chaotic. There's no sense of community. It is completely segregated. There's a clean line between the street or the exterior spaces and then the inside. So there's no relationship. There's no dialogue whatsoever. So we had the opportunity to do Jade, and that we wanted to create the significant interior-exterior space relationships. We wanted to bring even the courtyard concept from the vernacular, because a lot of people here, they don't want to even make the courtyards. Like, oh no, we want it to be part of the built-up area, which is inside the apartment. And we encourage the client, don't do that, because we're trying to elevate how people live. We want to make them feel better. We want to encourage connection between them and their surrounding. So what we've done in this project is that we have the courtyards and the units wrapping around the core, and we have the communal spaces, which I believe it's very important for people to even engage. People started not even engaging with each other because of how the architecture is, because everything is completely segregated. So we wanted to create that communal space. What we have it here, actually, you can see in the diagram on the roof and in the ground floor. This is a section, just to to understand how the apartment is. This is just a section through a typical apartment where you can see the interior spaces. Of course, you have a very good visual connection to the outside, to the surrounding. At the same time, you have the courtyard in the middle that bonds all those spaces together, and it is shaded. But at the same time, you have that visual, you have your privacy, you maintain your privacy, which is important, and then you have that connection with the outside. So at the same time, because of the harsh climate, and there's another, of course, you have the challenges between, like, how to create a better living for the people, and again, you have another challenge with our climate. So what we did in Jade is that we use a very simple palette with concrete and perforated metal. Again, maybe someone would say, oh, but you use metal and that's going to heat, and then sure, but at the same time it acts as it filters the light actually throughout the apartment, because here, yeah, like everybody wants big windows. Our clients, we understand that. Okay, you need a lot of natural light. You want the building to be lit all the time, and you don't use that electricity much. So you have to find another strategy how to have or obtain those, big windows. At the same time, you avoid that heat gain. So even the way we place the windows is strategically with those subtractive. So you have the glazing and you have the subtractive void that creates the courtyard being placed in it changes from floor to floor to give the building its own identity. And this is something else that actually we face. You see, all the buildings, they lack that street presence. They lack this identity. So we try to bring every solution and every strategy that we can get in this opportunity that we got. The street interface, again, that's another problem. As I said, there's like a clear segregation between the inside and the outside. So there's no dialogue, there's no transition from the street or the urban fabric all the way to the building. So we wanted to create that entrance. This entrance act like a transitional buffer. And this stairs, yes, it is part of the building, but at the same time, the public, when they walk around, they can sit on it. So there's some engagement, there's some communal engagement between the building and the tenants and the people who are outside, not part of the building. We spoke about the courtyard spaces, so this was very important for us to give that sense of openness and privacy. And of course, it was strategically placed just to give the building its own identity. The community spaces or the communal spaces, we kept it very simple, but we encouraged to have such spaces in a building so for people to interact and to just have some activities outdoors. As you see, even the street outside, there's no chance for people to experience the street or the neighborhood. So we have to create these spaces to just make their life better. That's another, this is the roof view. So in conclusion, the design explores a new typology, adapting and scaling up that traditional Middle Eastern courtyard concept. We learn from the past and we abstract it and we bring it to our modern concept and contribute to make someone's life feel better. Another project that we've done, the Edges. Edges was completed in 2015, so that's way back. And it is actually falls under the third category. So the building, let's talk about the streetscape first. So it's even actually worse than the other one. The other one has a bit of more room to play. It is highly dense. You have characterless buildings all around. There is no sense of identity. There is no connection with the street. So in this opportunity, we just wanted to create some dynamism in the street. So the very first thing we did is that we recessed the building to the back to create a small plaza. Again, we go back to have the sense of community and for people to interact with their surrounding and have some connection with the street. So we've created that space, and at the same time, to give some identity to the building, we have made that articulation on the facade. So it gave it changed actually the streetscape, and it gave this character to the building. And actually, I know a lot of tenants in that building, and they all were very happy being there. They just feel that they belong somewhere. There's like, you give us some space to even interact with our neighbors, because as you see, it's it's a full built up area. There's no plazas for people to interact, and I feel that simple things. So when you just understand the problem, and you're aware of it, you understand it, and then you can just propose, even if it's one solution, it will change how people feel. It will change even how the neighbors look at it, and maybe someone else will learn from you, and then it's like the gentrification effect, and then another building and another building can do the same, and then we have a better neighborhood. This is just some details about the building and how, and where we have the most sun hit in the facade, and you just have use some perforated sheets or use some aluminum louvers just to filter the light. This is an image of the entrance, and this is where we created that small plaza, as I said, when we reset the building. That was actually even a challenge with a client, because why are you assessing my building? I want to build this full built-up area. But no, this is healthy for you. This is healthy for your tenant. And you're going to even maintain them being there because they have value in that space. They feel that feel of openness and connectivity. So in conclusion, the building maintains a unique personality amongst its surrounding, and I'm happy that we have achieved that. And it succeeded actually in the catalyst in an attempt on organizing and transform the apartment typology. The third project is Ternion, which was completed in 2020. And actually, Ternion falls under the first category. So it is an experiment in modern Arabic residential architecture that challenges the traditional villas in the region. As I mentioned earlier, this first typology, or the areas where the Kuwaitis live, you have, as I said, wider streets, you have individual beautiful villas, but at the same time, there is no connection with the street. They act like islands, completely inward looking. There's just like a straight wall and a door. There's a clean line between, this is the house, and this is what's present on site, and this is the street. So in Ternion, this is what we try to achieve. I think we, as well, it's not like a singular villa. It's a composition of 3 independent villas, which read as a whole. And we wanted to introduce a different way to have a different dialogue for people, even to have a different way of thinking of having their houses. So what we did here is that we have carved out the mass. So you have the volumes, and we have sculpted it and carved it out to create the private spaces, semi-private spaces, terraces, shaded terraces. You have a sense of openness inside the house and outside. And with these strategies, which is completely, of course, it's abstracted from the vernacular, gave the building its own identity, its own character, and changed the streetscape. These are, I just have put some sections for you just to see how the building is there's a relationship with the building of its surrounding and with its own floors. So we have a visual connectivity, we have some open spaces at the same time, because again of the harsh weather, we use, of course, this cantilever shaded spaces. Again, we talk about the having large windows and having a lot of natural light. So you need to work with that. We need to implement these strategies so we can minimize the heat gain. The courtyard concept. So you have the water body and the courtyard in the middle, where all the living units is around that. So you can have the evaporative cooling effect and cross ventilation. That's another image from this is actually on the upper terrace, and you can see there's a visual connection with the surrounding. There's a visual connection with the neighbors, and you don't feel like you're completely inward. It is inward looking, but at the same time, it has that connection with the surrounding. So those frames, shield and cantilevers, frames this volumetric composition for the visual connectivity. Again, the street interface. I mean, as I mentioned before, we didn't want to just have a wall. There's like a transition between the outside and the inside. So there is you go and park in front or pass by the project, and then there is a language already happening between the outside and the inside, and there's even a sense of what's happening in the inside. It's not like a complete black wall that you don't know what is going on. So you have that relationship with the project. So this is some of the special. Actually, this is the middle villa. This is one of my favorite shots. So we have the private courtyard in the center of the house with a swimming pool, it's a replica of, or replicated the hosh in the olden days. So we used to have the hosh in the middle, which is the courtyard, and you have all the living units around it. This is something similar, but it's in a different way. So again, we have those big windows. In the past, we don't have these big windows. Here we have the big windows. So we want to have the water body in the middle, so we increase this cross ventilation and evaporative cooling. So in conclusion, the Ternion actually went against the mired established architecture and social norms of the region. And it actually exhibits an understanding of the vernacular, abstracting it, as I mentioned before, and applying those strategies in good effect. And I believe this typology particularly succeeded, and it is mature, practical, and relevant. Our integrative design approach responds to the macro and micro scales of urban development, paving the way for a regeneration of communities through strong public space conscience. And so basically, we can ask ourselves, how can we address complex problems of growing cities? And that could be, the solution rooted in design. Can an individual connect to instill change in a community? Can a house, like a starling in a flock, be a seed for the transformation of a neighborhood? And we believe it can. I believe it can. And we are actually thankful for the opportunity to have been able to create this lasting influence in the Middle East. But it's just, of course, the beginning. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of encouragement to happen. There's a lot of awareness that we have to rise. So what does the future holds? I really don't know, to be honest. I really don't know. With this rapid population growth and this speed of urban expansion, okay? I mean, we already have a challenge as architects. Architecture has a challenge because we need to find a balance between our needs and what the ecosystem needs. I mean, how do we go forward? I really don't know. But at the same time, the intention should be there. We have our values. We know what is missing, but we just have to have this. We have to contribute all together to achieve something. And a good example, actually, with the future prospect is Masdar city in Abu Dhabi, UAE. This is their aim. They're aiming for zero carbon, zero waste, sustainable transportation, sustainable water, the renewable energy, and which is great. The intention is there, the values are there, but I don't know. Still, we still don't have them 100%. And this takes a lot of investment, takes a lot of effort, which is fine. We're willing, I think, to do it. But we personally believe maybe it's a faster solution, a better solution, a quicker solution is materials. I mean, there's a lot of studies and the future technologies already experimenting with something like that. And imagine that we can use mushrooms to our homes. And the other day I was reading something, like you're creating those fashions and clothes from bamboos and zucchini skin. I think it's great. So we don't know what the future holds, but I really believe that materials and nanotechnology would be a game changer completely, could be a faster solution. Thank you for being patient.
And thank you so much for this really exciting and inspiring talk. I I loved the range of images that you brought in and the way that the materiality of the projects actually comes through on the screen really strongly. I mean, especially the brick tower that you showed. I mean, my jaw just drops whenever I see the images of that project. It's incredible, and I hadn't really looked at the basement on a big screen like this before with the combination of the stone and the brick. I just love it. So thank you so much, and for sharing the background on all these different projects and the way that different scaled projects and different scales of housing can all kind of share similar principles with the idea of building communities. I think we have a lot of questions, so if you don't mind, I might dive in. One of the questions that jumped out to me is from Jessica Sarahan, and she's wondering, is it difficult to convince clients to use the space more creatively to create these opportunities to connect and interact rather than just kind of meeting the demands of the client or building things that are purely functional?
I mean, it depends on the client, to be honest. See, each client is different. You know, everybody has a different objective, right? So for example, let's say if you have an investor, it's different than when someone coming to you to build their own home. It's a different perspective, you know? So basically what you do is that you need to understand your client's objectives. You need to understand exactly what they want and what are their concerns. It is not difficult to, I mean, it's challenging. You know, some people are easy to deal with, some people are not easy to deal with because people are not the same. You know, people are different. They have different concerns, they have different worries, they have different visions for their project, whether it's personal or whether it's, you know, it's as an investment point of view. But I just think that you really need to understand their point of view. You need to really understand what they want and what are their concerns, their budgets, for example. You have to try to just really understand them very well, and then you have to you know, lay it down. And again, at the end of the day, it's a creative process. You know, like when you start, you won't know anything once you start. You know, it takes time. It's a creative process. There's like a, let's say, minimum of, I don't know, depends on, you know, like let's give an example. It'll take 4 months. You're dealing with the client in the same project, and you have to encourage dialogue. A lot of people, they maybe even don't know even what they want, and they don't know even what their concerns are. They're just worried, you know. You just have to be honest with the client. You really have to understand them very well. And if there's something that, for example, they might argue with you, I don't call it an argument, I always call it a dialogue. You should have a healthy dialogue with your clients. But you have to explain your point of view in a good way. And don't always talk to them like architects, okay? We always fall into that, you know? We always talk as like everybody's an architect. No, not everybody's an architect. So you need to simplify things for them. You need to explain your part, explain your strategy, and say, okay, this is good for you. And you explain, you say what it is. What is it? You know? And it is not, no, it is, there's a challenge, of course, everything is challenging. But you really don't look at it as a challenge. Look at it as, how can we contribute and collaborate to make it better? That's, I think, I hope I answered her question.
For me, I think so. And yeah, it's interesting. I think that a lot of people, like, the knowledge of an architect isn't just technical. Of course, it's when you describe adding a water well in a basement to add this emotional experience to a house. These are the types of things that someone who hasn't studied architecture might not consider doing, and it makes a world of difference. So I think being able to have dialogue rather than kind of fulfill a list of requests is part of the job.
I mean, it's funny you said that, because the client of that project, initially they didn't want the fountain. And this is actually one of the, you know, the points that for me to convince the client, because at the end of the day, the project is not built. And I keep talking about the feeling and the sound of water, and you're coming down in the evening and those beautiful, you know, glowing lights. And so they cannot imagine, they can imagine, but not really. you know? But you just, actually, I forced that a little bit. I was like, imagine like in Hamra Palace and this water channels, and you really have to bring it on if they sort of, you're facing this, no, I don't want it. No, I don't think it's important. I just want to run around and make an empty space. But when it happened, they were very happy with it. It is like the star, it's like the core of the project. And they spent all their nights in the pandemic in it. So I'm very proud.
Oh,
yes. They sent me
so
pictures.
lovely.
That's what happened.
It sounds like people who are using the spaces that you've built as well, and that like you maintain a relationship afterwards.
I keep in touch with the clients because it's important for us to understand how our architecture is performing.
Yeah, that's so lovely.
You know it because you've designed it. So we were there from the first line, from writing the brief, and then it goes over those alterations, and then through the construction, which is pain, But then once you celebrate that last day with your team and you leave, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you have something in mind of what's going to happen, but you don't know what really is going to happen. What if they don't like it? What if they're angry about this fountain? What if? So I call from time to time, I say, how are you? How is it going? Because it takes time to get, adjusted to the house, maybe something new. And no, I do care about the feedback, and I want to know how they felt. I want to even know how they experienced the space.
Yeah,
it's important.
Because
you're learning. How do you evolve? How do you grow? You need to learn. You need to learn from that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's nice for us to hear also. Okay, so the next question we have from, and apologies if I pronounce this wrong, Zandran Dirks is asking about the local regulations. So he says, how was it working with the local regulations in order to achieve thermal comfort in such a harsh environment?
The regulations?
You mean so to do with heating and insulation? Sorry, not heating, to do with keeping the heat out and insulation.
I mean, well, okay, so each project is different. But if we're talking, for example, about the for example, Ternion, we used, as I said, those vernacular strategies by having, cantilevers. Make sure that you shade, if you have like a big window, you shade, you make sure that there's no direct sunlight on that window. Again, if it's, like those, it's not only that, even the glass that you choose. I mean, you have to find a balance between everything. Okay, so if you're using those big windows, you make sure it's a high performance glass, it's a low E glass. So by the glass itself, there's only 60% of the light coming in. At the same time, you shade it with these cantilever spaces. The aesthetics contribute in that. So for example, if we're talking about Ternion in this case, edges, for example, we used a very simple palette. And it's we fully clad it with local bricks, and this is like an insulation by itself. There's no heat gain in the building, and it's like even maintenance free up to date. So we don't have a problem with that. The thing is, it's always a challenge. The climate is there. We cannot control that, but you have to have it in mind. You have it in mind while you're doing the design, and placing the windows. Make sure that, for example, you don't have the largest window without even louvers in front of it where the sun hits the most. Because you need to do a proper analysis of the site. So we don't start right away, with the concept. First, we need to understand all the tools, like you use all the tools and all the given information from the site. And then you start by, orchestrating those spaces and orienting those spaces. Maybe this balcony should be here, not there. Maybe the smaller balcony should be there. So you basically it's a process. It's a process.
Thank you. And before I ask the next question, I'm just going to let everyone know that we have a poll published. So if you navigate along the lower right-hand corner between chat and questions, there's a poll section. And so if you're interested in learning more about our A+ Awards, we have a little poll up where you can request a submission guide or request more information about the A+ Awards. which are launching in October. So you guys can navigate there if you're interested. And I'm going to navigate to the next question. This one's kind of just a fun exercise in imagination. Peter Wasilko is asking how you think your designs would translate to housing needs in a Western city like New York. And maybe I'm going to throw in, because I know we've spoken about it a bit off camera, is maybe you can even bring in your experience working with your studio in Porto as well.
I've never been to New York. Honestly, I've never been to New York. Yeah, I've been to San Francisco and LA, but I've never been to New York.
So if you want to discuss it in the context of Porto, just in a different climate, in a different area with a different culture, I mean, you and I have been speaking about how working out of your Porto studio, there's just different concepts of what the needs are for housing culturally. So maybe if you want to speak to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, let me see how to answer that question. Just, part of experience. So basically, housing projects are housing projects. These are the shelters that we use, for us to, have our daily lives. But at the same time, it changes from culture to culture. As I was speaking to Hannah about this. So, for example, when we operate while operating in Portugal, like in the beginning, as I was telling you, my team in Portugal found it a little bit challenging and different of doing houses in Kuwait, because of course we all work on the projects of the studio. And it's just because it's not because it's a different house. It has the same things. It has bedrooms, has bathrooms, has living rooms, has laundry. So this is basic. But at the same time, the culture is not the same. And it changes the layout plan. In Kuwait, people tend to spend more time indoors because of the harsh climate. Privacy is an issue, again, it's from a cultural, religious point of view. So privacy is like number one. I need my house to be open. I need that courtyard. I need that balcony, but I don't want anybody to see me. No one can see me, not my neighbors, not the people who work in the street. So it changes how you approach the concept, the design. It just changed. About, for example, as I said, people tend to spend more time inside, and they tend to have a lot of, the families are bigger as well. So we have 5 kids, 6 kids, 7 kids. So the rooms are more spacious. It's just different take on it. When you go to Portugal, of course, I'm not saying that there's no big houses, there is, but the typologies that we worked so far, especially in the older city, everything is so small. It's like everything has to be super, super optimized. So you need to understand, because most people, they don't spend a lot of time inside. They spend more time outside, whether they're in work or their school, or they are just spending time in the park. They go home just to cook the meal and they just sleep. So it changes how you design. So again, culture plays a huge role in the approach of design, basically.
Thank you. And I think we have time for probably one more question.
Sure.
So this is a topic that I'm personally interested in also. And I know a lot of the statistics to do with being a woman in architecture in the United States, but I'm not sure what that is like in Kuwait and what those statistics look like. So I wonder, and I'm following on Hernan Bello's question, kind of to hear a bit more about your experience being a female architect, and if you have any advice for younger women interested in doing similar work.
My experience of being an architect woman, it was actually, to be honest, I didn't have it in mind until I started my practice. It wasn't that obvious, but you can tell that they don't. I'm being very honest about this. Okay, I'll be very blunt about it. They don't take women seriously. I mean, I'm not in general. I'm just talking in general. Yes, I faced a lot of challenges. People don't take you seriously. They think that you can't make it for some reason. I don't know. I don't know why. Me personally, I don't know why, because I just believe that if you have a goal, if you have a dream, and you just go and do it, but be strong about it. And there's one advice I got actually from someone, a male architect here in Kuwait. I faced a lot of it's not it's like they push you back. I don't want to say attack, they don't attack you, okay, but I was pushed back, especially in the construction industry. They pushed back, they don't take you seriously. It's like they don't hear you out. They tend not to, there's lack of respect, to be honest. But at the same time, or my advice I tell that to all my team members who are females, even people who work with us and people who intern with us. I take the girls, not the boys. I don't talk to the boys. Honestly, I take the girls on the side and I'm like, listen, especially because you're a woman, you need to be strong. You need to know what you want. And if this is what you want, you need to, be strong about it and never fear anything, because you're not less than anybody else. We have the same things. It's just there's something inside, or it's the society makes you feel this way. It's not the profession. I mean, the profession, we can talk about it, but the society, I'm talking from Kuwait or the Middle East. The society makes you feel this way. It's a male-dominant society, and you just have to ignore that, and you push back. They don't push you back, you push back, and just do what you love the most, and be just bold about it. Like literally, just be bold.
I think I can imagine from my own experience that it helps to have role models like you for younger women who are in school and who sometimes study with you. So thank you for that powerful answer. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Hend, for this talk. And it's been such a pleasure to get to speak with you. I can't wait to see what projects Studio Toggle has in the docket for the future. So definitely, I'm going to keep an eye on that. And so for everyone watching, thank you for coming. As I mentioned, there's a poll in the lower right-hand corner, so please feel free to fill that out if you're interested. We also have our next talk coming up tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. It's going to be with Sanjay Puri of Sanjay Puri Architects. So I hope to see you all there. And I hope that we can continue this conversation in the future. And
yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Hannah and Paul. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, and I know it's your weekend now.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you.